5 lessons. We're going to continue on today, exploring the specific manifesting techniques that Neville explains again and again throughout 5 lessons. If you haven't watched the previous couple of videos, 5 lessons contains, in my opinion, by far the most consolidated practical advice that Neville gives in regards to how to manifest external changes in your reality in a practical way. 5 lessons is the most practical advice Neville gives. So it's a great book to read or to listen to in audiobook form. And what I'm finding out, just reading these instructions the last couple of videos, is there's so much here. And we're still in just the first lecture, just really underscores how good a teacher Neville was, and how helpful this information is compared to, in my opinion, a lot of Neville stuff, particularly the later stuff from the late 50s and 60s, which is much more muddled from a practical psychological level, and contains, in my opinion, just a bunch of spiritual mumbo jumbo that worked well for Neville personally, but frankly probably will not work for you all that well, the instructions and advice he gives there. The best advice that Neville gave in the 60s is basically here in 5 lessons. He already had it. He already had formulated it in the late 30s, early 40s, and just kept on expressing it in different ways. By the late 50s, I think he was pretty bored of it, and he had the promise experience, which was very important for him, but it muddled everything that came after in terms of the instructions he gave. So yeah, that's all worth mentioning. Another thing worth mentioning is the one thing I can really think of that's very, very helpful for a lot of people that is not in 5 lessons is revision. I don't believe he speaks about revision at all in 5 lessons, or only touches upon it, minorly. It really wasn't until the 1950s that Neville talked more about revision, which is another very practical tool, which many people love to use. But yeah, we're just going to keep going with this the next several videos. And it's going to take several videos to just go over all these instructions because they're so good. Before I forget to, I mentioned it last video, I'm offering a new special month-long program, coaching program. It's an immersive program, which means you get to either talk to me on Zoom or text me or email with me every day for a month straight. So it's a very profound program if you're looking for help implementing these manifesting tools, whether it's Neville or anything else. As you know, this channel, my approach is holistic. So we just use whatever works. And one thing that works very well for some people is the advice that Neville shares here in 5 lessons. So continuing on, we ended last time by talking about how you make, in your imagination, when you're in that relaxed, drowsy state, you make elsewhere here, and you make the future now. We're capable of doing that when we're in this, basically hypnotic, relaxed state, right? As I said yesterday, in your mind, a future event, you can make a past event. And there's a lot of profundity to that. And Neville said the difference between feeling yourself in action here and now and visualizing yourself in action as though you were on a motion picture screen is the difference between success and failure. Using Neville's approach, that's the way he looked at it. I can tell you right now, you can visualize yourself just on a movie screen, and not in action, and it can still be very, very effective. Maxwell Maltz talks about this in Psycho-Cybernetics. And we've done videos about how Maltz's visualization techniques are not as hard to apply as Neville's are for a lot of people. I'll put a link above to one of the several podcast episodes we did about that. So let's read these directions today a little bit more. The next paragraph, Neville says, the difference will be appreciated if you will now visualize yourself climbing a ladder. Then, with eyelids closed, imagine that a ladder is right in front of you and feel yourself actually climbing it. That's a difference, If you just think of climbing a ladder like it's on a movie screen and you see yourself climbing it, that's one thing. But then if you actually feel yourself climbing it, your feet on it and your hands climbing up, that's a very different experience, viscerally, kinesthetically, than just seeing yourself in your mind's eye climbing it, but you're an observer. Okay, so again, the visceral power of doing these Neville exercises are why they work so amazingly well some of the time for some people. Neville continues, experience has taught me to restrict the imaginary action which implies fulfillment of the desire, to condense the idea into a single act, and to reenact it over and over again until it has the feeling of reality. Otherwise, your attention will wander off along an associational track, and hosts of associated images will be presented to your attention, and in a few seconds, they will lead you hundreds of miles away from your objective in point of space and years away in point of time. So, Neville here is saying you want to loop a small act, a small imaginal act that has happened after your desire has been fulfilled. He gave the example of you've been promoted, right? You've been promoted. So an act that happens after your desire of being promoted has been fulfilled is your colleague shakes your hand and congratulates you. What Neville is saying is you want to restrict the action to just shaking the hand and the person saying congratulations or something like that, something short, a couple second event in your mind, right? Maybe just even the handshake, and viscerally feel that. Keep on looping that again and again. Don't have them shake your hand and then you start saying, thank you. This is so great. Let's celebrate. Let's have lunch. Let's go over here. And in your mind, you start thinking about, I once had dinner at some other place and it was a really good dinner. And You're way off track. So Neville says loop it again and again till it has all the feeling of actually happening right now in reality. So restrict it just to the handshake, for instance, or just to the congratulations, or having the person pat you on the shoulder and you feel it. And it's like, when you feel it, it's like the relief. Oh my God, it's done. Wow. Neville continues, if you decide to climb a particular flight of stairs because that is the likely event to follow the fulfillment of your desire, then you must restrict the action to climbing that particular flight of stairs. Should your attention wander off, bring it back to the task of climbing that flight of stairs and keep on doing so until the imaginary action has all the solidity and distinctiveness of reality. Again, you're looping just climbing the stairs. If you start, imagining climbing the stairs and feeling it, and then you're thinking about what's at the top of the stairs and what's up there, or you start thinking about the railing and you think, it's whatever. It gets too confusing. You loop the single action over and over again until it has the distinctness of being real right now. You've brought this future event into nowness. That's the experience that you want, that Neville is advocating in this approach. He says, the idea must be maintained in the mind without any sensible effort on your part. You must, with the minimum of effort, permeate the mind with the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Again, this is why this is like a practice you have to refine. Because you must maintain you must maintain this sense of fulfillment without any sensible hard effort on your part. With minimum effort, you permeate the mind with the feeling of the wish fulfilled. It's a technique. He continues to say, a drowsiness facilitates change because it favors attention without effort. But it must not be pushed to the state of sleep in which you no longer are able to control the movements of your attention, but a moderate degree of drowsiness in which you are still able to direct your thoughts. That's what you want. Again, I mentioned last video that New Yorker article from 1943. I'll link to it below again. Neville saying that you probably don't want to do this. And he later changed his tune. He changes his tune in regards to when to do it. But in this article, he was saying, don't do it before bed because you fall asleep. Too many people fall asleep. If you think you're going to fall asleep, don't do it before bed. Do it in the middle of the day. Do it when you're still awake because you want to stay awake, but you want to feel drowsy. Like relaxed and drowsy, not too rational, just attention without effort. You push it too far and you fall asleep. So that, that's the fine line you practice and work with, right? That's enough for today. There's a little bit more from this first lecture in 5 lessons, but we'll get to that next video. Again, just a ton to chew on in a few paragraphs here. This is just really Neville, in many ways, at maybe his practical best. I mean, he has so much great stuff, so it's hard to say this is the best, but this is just so practical, what he's talking about in 5 lessons in regards to these specific ways to implement his manifesting techniques. Great stuff. If you have questions or if you want coaching from me, radicalcounselor.com. Until next time.